I found every skincare DIYer and beauty brand's worst nightmare in the reviews for an $80 product on Sephora's website.
Do not buy. I purchased and opened July 2024, and today, January 2025, it had mold in it. There was visible growth and change in color. Disgusting.
This 1-star warning was right at the top. Yikes. So I took a look at the other 1-star reviews, and again, horrible, grew mold, do not recommend. Double yikes. But here's the thing. Those reviewers were completely wrong. A few of the reviews complaining about mold included photos. I immediately recognized the problem, and a quick check of the ingredient list confirmed my diagnosis. It wasn't mold, but it was a mistake I've seen a lot of DIYers make too. So today, we are digging into what that mistake is, because you should never have to explain to an upset, grossed out customer or friend that, no, that isn't mold, and even though it is lumpy, sorry about that, it is totally safe to use, I promise. Ugh.
The formulation in question was a shimmery body oil I found while I was doing research for an upcoming video.
It was a completely anhydrous or water-free formulation, so barring some seriously wet contamination, this product literally could not grow mold. What it was actually doing was going grainy. This problem is much more common in body butters and balms solid products, but certain ingredients and situations can cause it to happen in liquid products too. To help you avoid that, let's quickly recap what graininess is and why it happens. Oils and butters are made up of a variety of fatty acids like oleic, linoleic, and linolenic, liquid unsaturated fats, and stearic, myristic, lauric, and palmitic, solid saturated fats. Each has its own characteristics, but in a discussion of graininess, melting point is the big one. Graininess happens when a product melts or even just begins to melt and then cools the wrong way. The wrong way is really just any way that allows higher melting point fatty acids to cool before everything else does, creating hard little blobs in a product that's otherwise a lot softer than it should be. Because melting is the start of the problem, the closer a product lives to its melting point, the more likely things are to go wrong. If you'd like to learn a lot more about graininess, why it happens, and how to prevent it in your DIYs, please check out my DIY Skincare for Beginners mini course. In it, I teach you all the things that I wish I knew when I was first getting started, so you can just fast forward past all of those beginner mistakes and start creating safe skincare that you love. I'll throw a link to it in the description box below this video. So why was this body oil going grainy? The answer is right in the ingredient list, where coconut oil occupies the top spot. Coconut oil is a funny oil. Well, oils like sunflower oil and almond oil stay liquid unless you put them in the fridge or the freezer. Coconut oil will solidify at temperatures below about 24 degrees Celsius, which means it is usually solid at room temperature here in Canada, but will also melt during a summer heat wave. Coconut oil solidifies for the same reason any solid fat does. It contains lots of solid saturated fatty acids, with about 45% lauric acid and 18% myristic acid. That's actually more saturated fat than shea butter contains. Of course, if you've used both shea butter and coconut oil, you'll know they're pretty darn different from one another, even if they are both solid at 21 degrees Celsius. Even though shea butter has less saturated fat than coconut oil, it has a much richer, creamier feel and melts much more slowly. That's because lauric and myristic acids, the fatty acids that make up most of coconut oil, have much lower melting points than the fatty acids that make shea butter solid, stearic and palmitic acids. And all of this creates an oil that is quite the shapeshifter. So when it plays the starring role in a body oil, when that product is freshly made and poured and bottled, everything is liquid and wonderful, but clearly it doesn't always stay that way. So, of course, I tried it myself to confirm. Guided by the ingredient list on the original, I melted together 45% coconut oil, 30% mineral oil, 20% sunflower oil, and 5% bronze mica, and bottled that all up in a glass bottle. I then set about trying to mimic what the oil might go through if it was ordered online at a relatively warm time of year and then lived in a cooler home. To approximate what might happen during shipping, I heated the oil up to about 30 degrees Celsius to mimic the oil going from like the cool store to a hot truck, and then I let it cool slowly back down to room temperature to mimic it sitting in a cooler shipping facility. I then heated the oil up again to around 30 degrees Celsius to mimic it going out for delivery in the back of a hot, like non-air conditioned delivery truck. Once my oil arrived, I let it cool to room temperature, and then I placed it on a windowsill in my home that's getting down to like 15 to 17 degrees Celsius overnight, and then up to around 22 degrees Celsius during the day. It did not take long after arriving at home to find that bottle full of solid white lumps. Once the oil warmed back up to room temperature-ish, so like 21 degrees Celsius, the blobs came off the side of the bottle and then sunk down, but they didn't vanish. So I gently rewarmed the oil up to about 26 degrees Celsius, and that did melt everything, reliquefy it, but another night on the windowsill turned it lumpy again, and honestly, way worse than before. So yes, you can get rid of the lumps by heating the oil, but let's be real. If you aren't a formulator and you've just spent $80 on a body oil, when you notice highly suspicious white lumps in that expensive body oil, your first instinct is not going to be to gently microwave it to see if that fixes it. You're probably going to take pictures, leave a bad review, and throw it out because you think it's full of mold. So, yeah, like obviously not good. And that's just one way that coconut oil makes a pretty bad body oil base. Several reviewers complained that their oil froze solid, making it impossible to use. Well, another said, I was really shocked by some of the reviews stating that they couldn't get the product out of the bottle. For me, it was completely opposite. I found it was the same texture as pouring oil out of a bottle, and I had to give it a good shake to mix it all up. It looked separated. I'm betting the customers who struggled with solidification kept their homes cooler than those who described the oil as a thin liquid, while those who experienced graininess kept their homes somewhere in the middle. And however this formulation was developed and tested, they obviously didn't try exposing it to a variety of different ambient temperatures. Frankly, that's a rookie mistake, and for $80, I expect better, especially since reviews about this go back to 2009. Even in countries where coconut oil is reliably liquid, somebody is going to have their air conditioning set cool enough to cause problems. So, lesson learned. Don't use lots of an oil that easily tips from liquid to solid in a product that's supposed to be liquid, because it'll solidify and get stuck in the bottle for some customers, while others will be seriously put off by a suspicious, if harmless, chunky mess. Thankfully, chunkiness it's a pretty easy to avoid problem in shimmery body oils. Just stick to liquid oils. The much harder problem to avoid is separation, something else that this expensive body oil struggles with. So click here if you'd like to learn how to make a shimmery body oil that doesn't split into shake before use sadness. And then you'll be doing two things better than this $80 body oil did.